travelled north to speak to him about the incident. So every bit as intriguing, or almost the focal point around this story as the incident itself, is Sterling's Instagram post and the fallout. The young black kid is looked at in a bad light, which helps fuel criticism and aggressive behaviour. So for all the newspapers that don't understand why people are racist in this day and age, all I have to say is have a second thought about fair publicity and give all players an equal chance. I think people at this stage are familiar with the two stories. So Tosin Adebayo and Phil Foden. Story about Foden, as the headline: Manchester City starlet Phil Foden buys new £2 million home for his mum. The story about Adebayo is young Manchester City footballer, 20, on 25 grand a week, splashes out on mansion on market for 2.25 million despite having never started a Premier League match. And this has prompted much discussion about the general coverage of Sterling and players who are black. There was an interesting thread courtesy of Paul McCarthy, who we've tried to get on. We were speaking to Paul this evening, we just couldn't make the times work. He is a former journalist, former sports editor of the News of the World. So I'll give you the abridged version of his tweets, but I don't think I'm changing his meaning overly. When acting as a media advisor to Sterling 7, at Sterling 7, I once asked a tabloid news reporter, that's interesting, tabloid news reporter, who had written several derogatory stories about Raheem as to why he was singled out above seemingly every other Premier League footballer for this kind of treatment. This came off the back of Sergio Aguero fracturing a rib in a car crash in Amsterdam when he'd taken a private jet to a concert during a few days off. It made the papers but barely raised a ripple. My argument was, had it been Raheem, he would have been denounced and accused of living the, quote, bling lifestyle. And then he has in brackets, bling being tabloid shorthand for a young black lifestyle, and made a scapegoat, whereas Aguero didn't receive anything like the same level of opprobrium. Despite a lengthy discussion, the reporter couldn't give me any answer other than, well, you know, Raheem should expect it, that's just how it is. He says, I love newspapers. Until 7 years ago, I made a career of being a tabloid sports reporter, so I'm hardly going to wholly denounce an industry that gave me a comfortable lifestyle and allowed me to travel the world, covering the finest sporting events. But we cannot ignore the fact that elements of the newspaper industry propagate covert and overt racism. Not against all young black footballers, but against those who don't fit into an historic white middle-class view of, quote, knowing their place. I've thought long and hard about that series of posts because I don't want to be accused of biting the hand that fed me for many years, but I've seen it from the other side, and I'm distinctly uncomfortable with the kind of attitudes that see somebody like Raheem as fair game. There are certain sections which go beyond the boundaries of what is acceptable. I'm glad that at Sterling 7 has had the courage to voice his views. It's probably long overdue. Anthony Joseph, who wrote that Mail article about Adebayo, has described the reaction to his story as astonishing. He's saying it was topical at the time. He said, the story was done in January at a time when BT aired a documentary on teenage footballers who are earning millions. It was topical. There was a huge debate about it. The same day, there was at least an hour segment on the same issue on TalkSport. Reporters don't do headlines at Mail Online, but I still don't feel it vilified him at all. And nor did I even make a connection of his colour. It didn't even cross my mind. And you were saying Anthony Joseph of Asian descent and has received plenty of racist abuse himself, as he has said. So there's some of the thoughts going on at the moment. And the other final thread I'll mention was put together, if you're not totally au fait with all the treatment of Sterling over the last number of years, though I think to some extent or other everyone is. Adam Keyworth put this together on Twitter. He had a thread of all the Raheem Sterling headlines, about 30 different tweets, and you know, some of the headlines: from troubled youth to 100k a week, the life of footy idiot Raheem Sterling. It was especially bizarre. I don't know why they dreamt that up. Don't be so greedy, one headline. Cop offered 20k, he wants 50k.
We spoke a bit about that earlier. Yeah, he did push through the type of move which a lot of English players have spoken about doing and didn't do. Like, you know, the likes of Terry and other players, Gerrard, who like flirted with bigger clubs or rival clubs and didn't go through with it. Rooney, Sterling did, so he's always been a target for a certain amount off the back of that.
England failure, steps off plane, England failure being Raheem Sterling, steps off plane and insults fans by showing off blinging house. That's the front page of The Sun, and the headline is Obscene Raheem.
Yeah. Ludicrous.
Manchester City star Raheem Sterling earns 200 grand a week, but takes €80 EasyJet flight back from holiday. David Kent, Mail Online. Man City ace Raheem Sterling drives a filthy, because it wasn't washed, you see, filthy 50 grand sterling Mercedes. I thought that was loaded, you know. This is what happened, you know, all that money and still can't buy class, you can't take care of business. Love rat Raheem Sterling proposes to long-suffering girlfriend Paige Millian.
I think a lot of footballers have had the love rat.
Yeah, he's been called a rat here on the front page of The Sun. Raheem Sterling, he mentioned this one himself last week. Raheem Sterling treats himself to a spot of breakfast after missing out and being crowned Young Player of the Year the night before.
It's just even preposterous. The EasyJet one is definitely is up there in the ridiculous things. But that is the type of story which we touched on this a small bit earlier in the news round, that just a player, just he is in that. He's in that zone where everything he does is newsworthy. He's basically been followed for a period of time in everything he does.
Now, the algorithms have decided and pointed to the fact that Raheem Sterling does good business. Now, I was saying to you earlier on, I stand by the point, so I can keep going through some of these headlines. There's the one about his tattoo, and it's, you know, he stabs him, he's shot himself in the foot, and you know, they get a victim of gun crime on the front page of The Sun. Say sorry for gun tattoo. England's £160 World Cup kit is made in Bangladesh by workers on 21p an hour, and it was noted that the player they used on the front page of the shirt was Raheem Sterling. I get, you know, some of this maybe, some of these not, but I was making the point to you that of these 30 or so headlines, it strikes me that I think Sean Custis made this argument. I haven't seen all of Sean Custis's comments today, but I just saw that headline that he was saying that these would have been done by about a Rooney as well, or about a...
it was Neil Custis, yeah.
Neil Custis, excuse me. But there is an element with, I think, a good degree of these front pages, whereby, take Wayne Rooney as an example. I think a lot of them would have been done about Wayne Rooney as well. You know, the new house, if he goes to Pound World, I think that would have made those same sections as well. And I think there's certainly the racism thing, I don't doubt. There is also just a class situation.
I think there's definitely something in that.
It's the boy from the council estate. This is what happens. You give you know, the working class underbelly of society all of this money, and they will either have a blinging, extravagant, wasteful, awful, vacuous lifestyle, or they're still going to get the EasyJet flight and still going to go to Penn World and still take a piss in an alleyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually heard that point to bring it local about even some of the discussion over, like, why wasn't Robbie Keane as beloved a figure? And at times the argument would be, well, you know, Robbie was just...
working class.
He wasn't as... I don't know, as clean cut a figure as some or other sort of football. You know, Kevin Doyle came on the scene, who got unbelievable sort of wave of good publicity. I mean, Kevin Doyle's an absolutely great fella, but because Robbie, I don't know, bit sort of brash at times or whatever, and, you know, he lived a good life. You know, he travelled and went to football. There was sometimes you could argue some of the coverage of Robbie too. Now it's very different.
No, it is a bit different. It ties in with the. I mean, we like a certain type of sports person. Richard Dunn from a very similar area is beloved, but he played the humble. That's an
Irish thing. We like the humble know your place stuff. Yeah, big time. How dare you sort of flaunt the fact that you might be good? Yeah. You know, and there is something in that. You know, there's a type of confidence that we don't like. We don't like too much of it in your face. But I mean, the starting thing is, I think his post yesterday was good. I think the Paul McCarthy thread you reference is excellent. Yeah. I think that sort of deals with it, because I think, you know, the line about covert and overt racism is an important point to make. Again, you know, people who heard the news round will hear we're repeating some of the points, but I don't believe that people are like sitting in a room and deciding let's go after, you know, the black kid today. You know, let's do something that's, you know, well, let's go for this real racist angle. A lot of it is unconscious. A lot of it is the language that's used is just hitting bases and playing towards stereotypes in a way that it definitely is. Like, I mean, it's offensive, and it's pretty blatant. But I'm not sure if the intention from the start in all cases is generally meant to be that. But you look at the overall body of work put together and that sequence of headlines put together, and certainly the contrast in the treatment of Raheem Sterling relative to Harry Kane, who I think appointed Gary Neville met this evening, is a striking one.
We'll get to Gary Neville now. Seamus Coleman's just scored an own goal for Everton. Bit unfortunate. There was a ball that was crossed in. Watford 1-0 down. Ball crossed in, went off the post and then hit Coleman on the knee. He just didn't.
He couldn't get his body in the right shape. Just the quick reaction just wasn't there.
Yeah, so it's an own goal. It's 1-1 at Goodison Park. You mentioned Gary Neville. This is Monday Night Football we're watching. So earlier on this evening, in that 7 to 8 hour, Gary Neville was talking and the Raheem Sterling situation came up. So Neville had some interesting things to say about Sterling and the how to handle the treatment he's endured. And as you'll hear, they certainly were conscious of it in England camp. So have a listen.
Out of obviously a negative, I think it's a big positive. I think yesterday when I saw it break on social media, I saw Raheem's statement. It's provoked a huge reaction from everybody. And thinking, obviously I was coming on this programme tonight, started thinking, reflect about my experiences with Raheem in terms of obviously working with him for 4 years with England. And actually, I had a personal experience in 2016 directly with him and felt as though, to be fair, it was breaching player, coach confidence of, what happened. So I actually rang up and asked him whether I could actually speak about it. I thought it was important that he didn't feel like I'd breached his confidence. But I think it's actually the right thing to do. He came to see me one-on-one in 2016. I think it was 3 or 4 days before the Iceland game. Pre-tournament, I don't know if you'll remember, he was getting absolutely battered going into that tournament, getting so much stick. We were aware of that, obviously, within the coaching staff, that fans were onto him, the media were onto him, asking a lot of questions about him. It then continued into the tournament, into the stadiums. To the point whereby there were those groans and those sort of little boos and little things. And it takes a lot for a player to come and see a coach. And he actually came, I was in the analysis room and I remember the analyst leaving and he walked in. And to be fair, just started to download on me, why was this happening? Why was this so personally accepted? That he would get criticism playing for England for his performance levels. He accepted that he would be scrutinised as an England player. He didn't want any special treatment. But that it was so vicious, he felt so targeted, he didn't know what to do about it. I saw what I felt was somebody who has got a great mentality and is tough, but also a level of vulnerability in terms of how does he deal with this, how does he cope with it, how does he come out of it. Really, as a coach, to be fair, me, being honest with you now and reflecting on it even yesterday, thinking, I didn't really know how to deal with it. I went into what would be protective mode, coach mode. One of our most important players, how do you get him ready for the next match? Raheem, you're a great player, we love you to bits, which to be fair, we did. As a coaching staff, he played nearly all the games for us. And trying to sort of patch him up, really, to get him to a point whereby you were never really dealing with the sort of what would be underlying issue. And maybe you never would be able to in that sort of one session. But actually, reflecting now, maybe even brushing it aside a little bit, as being honest with you, thinking, Raheem, you're strong, that's why you're playing for England, you're good enough, you've played all your career, it's happened to players before you, but really deep down understanding that there was a level, there was a tonal difference to the actual attacks that he was getting compared to others. And directly in that tournament, Harry Kane, who is rightly, he's the blue-eyed boy of English football, he's a sensational player, we love him to bits. He was having a difficult time in that tournament. And it was portrayed it was because he was on corners. Raheem was having a difficult time and it was because of other reasons and more personal reasons at times, and the language used towards him was difficult, and I don't think he could understand. I think he was asking me why this was happening. And then post-tournament we got knocked out, and obviously it was bad from a football point of view, but the abuse that he received, particularly in the media, beyond that tournament, and the language that was used against him, I've not seen it before, and I've seen some. I've seen the sort of. I've lived closely with David Beckham, with Wayne Rooney, played in Euro '96 and for a few years with Paul Gascoigne. Seen a lot over the years, but the nastiness that I think is there, and look back upon that time now and think, really, was I walking? You think about walking by on the other side and not dealing with the real issue, trying to sort of patch him up and going, is that the right reaction? But he was willing to stand up and go out and carry on playing. He has continued to go on and play at an outstanding level. But he's been carrying this now for years. This is not just yesterday. This is not just a Chelsea fan at the weekend. This has been going on for years with him. And I've known about this for years because he came to see me in 2016. So was it happening before that even? And it's a really difficult situation, and one that, to be fair, you think, how would I deal with that again if I was put in that situation? How would I try and help him? Because he's a tough lad, he's a tough cookie in terms of the way he is to come through everything he's coming through, and the scrutiny he comes through to perform like he has done is a miracle almost.
So that's Gary Neville this evening speaking on Sky Sports. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like to be able to bring that sort of anecdotal evidence of the impact of it is striking. And he says about the level of nastiness, and it's true. I guess it's so much more accessible as well for the players as well. I mean, you think of in different parts of time where, you know, people that have been heavily scrutinised in the English press, and even mentioned Beckham, but even go back to Graham Taylor and that different, okay, there's different strands of coverage here. I'm always very wary of being seen to lump them all under one heading, and that's not the intention. But I mean, Sterling, you know, some of the stuff in Euro 2016, he's on social media, he's seen thousands upon thousands of comments. Like, you can search his name at given times, and some of the stuff you'd find is deplorable. And it's the same. I mean, we've had it here with Cyrus Christie getting a couple of comments and stuff, you know, from people wherever they were. They might even have been in England. But the ability for that player to access the abuse they're getting now is, it makes it unbelievably personal. And that's why, I mean, ironically though, that also gave him the forum to articulate his points extremely well,
yeah, sure.
Which he did. So,
it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes from here. So I would think, for one thing, articles about black players now will be scrutinised like never before.
Very much of the lifestyle. You see, the thing is that, you know, I think there's always going to be a wariness for someone now if Sterling's form suffers for a period of time, for someone to do it. Because I actually saw yesterday there was people, you know, getting lumped in, and journalists who just wrote pieces that were critical of Sterling's performance getting brought into it as though that was part of some kind of. Let's not sort of move away from what the real issue is here. And to me, it's all the personal stuff and all the stuff you mentioned about his lifestyle, what he spends his money on, you know, what car he drives or doesn't drive, is he on an EasyJet flight, and the perception that who is this uppity figure, you know, which is very different to any football analysis. Even I mean, certainly the Harry Kane point that Neville makes, it is striking. He was on corners, and that was probably a dig at management as well. But it's
funny, even the language we use, the blue-eyed boy.
I know, and some of the depictions of Kane, you know, in the English press at times, and you have these Braveheart figures, you know, as they're portrayed, and it's generally people of a certain profile.
Have they ever had a black Braveheart figure? Paul
Ince maybe at a time.
To a point.
You know, Paul Ince maybe at a time, but it's a valid point to raise. I don't know. Like you're applying undertones to everything now, and that could be just going. That just could be just going too far. Totally, but certainly in the case of some of the language around him, it is. There's going to be a real awareness there. But I mean, they said this earlier. Like these stories, particularly like stuff when they're online. So it's not even about. Some of that stuff is page one. Some of the Sterling stuff. You know, about his breakfast or whatever it might be, like that's a newspaper that could be page 17 or 18 or wherever, but online people are attracted to those stories. Like there's a real cynicism about the base that responds and reacts to these stories. The amount of comments they generate, as I said earlier, go beneath the line on some of these pieces, and what you see is it's terrifying stuff, you know. And there is a view out there of, you know, the 4 fans shouting at Raheem Sterling on Saturday. There's many more of them out there. And there was a John Barnes clip that we played in the news round, is how much of this is media influencing society and how much of it is media reacting to society. And I think
Barnes, by the way, is very much of the opinion it's media
influencing it, and you know, you can't really disagree with that when you go through some of the examples we speak about, but you also can't deny that society exists and is getting its opportunity to air its, you know, views now in a way that wasn't always, you know, it was Robbie Early mentioned earlier, that it's always been there. It's just it's been suppressed or be below the radar for a period of time, and now it's coming back out again, and you can go into a broader debate about English society at the moment.
Well,
and what's happening there.
Declan Lynch was in yesterday reviewing the papers. He was brilliant, and at one point, we were talking about the Sterling thing, and he was saying, well, they're wondering why can't we get the Brexit plan to work, and he was saying, well, there is no Brexit plan. It's just racism. It's just we don't want foreigners in here.
Well, that's
what it is. That's a feverish atmosphere. And look, that's one interpretation. It might be a bit unfair on some people who voted leave, but certainly for a quotient of society, that is the Brexit plan, beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, that was a driving factor in the vote.
So we should update people on the latest at Goodison. Seamus Coleman own goal. Then there was a penalty for Everton, which was missed, but before that there was a second Watford goal. It's 2-1 Watford.
So yeah, Coleman own goal, and then Decore scored for Watford in pretty much the next attack. And he stole in at Coleman's back post, although his run wasn't tracked that well. But then Everton missed a penalty. But there was a moment where Yerry Mina was having a word with Coleman and saying, "Come on." He basically suffered.
Get your act together.
Well, I don't know whether get your act together or chin up or whatever it might have been, but he had a rough 5 minutes there, and he was obviously a bit frazzled. But
own goal and then out jumped at the back post.
I mean, the run came from pretty deep behind them, but still, it was a bit of a mismatch in terms of height. But it was on his patch, so ultimately, he's going to feel a bit of responsibility.
74 minutes gone. Everton 1, Watford 2. So we'll take a short break. Gary Breen's going to join us. I mean, Liverpool suddenly are top of the league as well, which nobody was expecting last weekend. So we'll talk to Gary in just a second. Troy Parrott as well, it seems, at 16 years of age, is in the Spurs first team squad. So we'll talk about him as well.
Football on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Boyle Sports. Now with same day withdrawals to your Visa debit card.
This week on News Talk, we've teamed up with Barnardo's to make spirits bright this Christmas. Barnardo's works with more than 15,000 children and families every year, and you can follow the stories of their team, their challenges, and those that will benefit from their work this Christmas, right through the week. You can help to make spirits bright this Christmas too. Donate now at newstalk.com/Barnardo's.
Would m'lady care to dance?
Certainly, sir.
A story to be told, a drama to unfold, and jewellery to behold. Experience a moment captured in time at Rhinestone St Andrew Street. Victorian brooches, Edwardian lockets, Venetian glass beads, rhinestone jewellery from the golden age of Hollywood, modern gemstones and pearls. Capture the elegance and romance of a bygone era and bring it back to life with a one-off piece of jewellery from Rhinestone's 18 St Andrew Street, Dublin 2.
There are more people experiencing homelessness in Ireland now than ever before. There is one way you can help this Christmas. Support Peter McVerry Trust to refurbish, renovate or repair 100 homes. Support Peter McVerry Trust to help 100 people and families leave homelessness behind permanently. Visit pmvtrust.ie/100 homes or call 01 823 0776 and help more people home this Christmas. Thank you.
'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the house. New appliances had been installed with a click of a mouse. A fridge freezer, a dishwasher, new oven and hob. A 50-inch TV and speakers, just the job. You see, at Appliances Delivered, we always endeavour to make each festive season the best one ever. And with deliveries up to Christmas, you can count on us to get Christmas sorted without any fuss. AppliancesDelivered.ie. Christmas delivered.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Sol Campbell wonders somebody? I don't think so.
Well,
not in the true sense.
Yeah, I mean, Sol Campbell's...
Like that team, it was Shearer, it was Beckham.
Yeah, Sol Campbell's, I don't know, Sol Campbell's has a very individual journey,
He's an eccentric character anyway at the best of times.
Yeah, I know. I suppose he did make a very controversial move at a point in his career, which obviously opened him up to serious amount of abuse as well. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's...
Certainly not of the Harry Kane variety, we'll put it that way.
No.
Gary Breen is with us. Evening, Gary.
Good evening, guys.
How you doing? So we want to talk to you about the weekend and Liverpool suddenly top of the league. Any thoughts on this fallout from the Raheem Sterling controversy? Seems like too small a word. It feels pretty seismic, really, in many ways. What have you made of it all?
Well, I've been so impressed with Raheem Sterling to be able to influence such a topic the way he has done for a young man has been so impressive. Ultimately, for me, racism is about power. And what he's done by just releasing that statement, he's took the power away from those Chelsea fans who were abusing him. They look like they'll get life bans from football now. The very fact he's taken on the newspapers who essentially have had the power over him for so long, and he's made it such a debate. And you're talking about a 23-year-old man who's had so much to deal with, and he just shows so much strength in character to be able to get through this, to be able to give his opinion and still produce on the field like he has done. He's gone to another level. He's a superstar player now. And when I think about you, I heard you just referencing Sol Campbell there. And the impressive thing for me is that Raheem Sterling is given this voice when he's active footballer. Sol Campbell has said about the very fact that if he was white, he would have been a captain of England for 10 years. He did it after he played. Why didn't you do it at a time when you had that voice? That's my frustration. Also, I counter that by saying, well, so much has been made now that he's had to go to Macclesfield as a manager, and the likes of Lampard and Gerrard have got those high-profile jobs. But the very fact is I don't think that's based on race. I think you just have to sit in front of the three of them, and who would you believe to take your club forward? I don't think Sol's a particularly good communicator. I feel a little bit indifferent when I'm listening to him, to be perfectly honest. I know him reasonably well, but I don't see him as a leader as such, even though he was an iconic player. The references to him still being a player and to suggest it's a racism that he hasn't got this job doesn't add up to me. But in terms of what Raheem Sterling has done, is incredible. I was at a Chelsea game when Mourinho brought his Inter Milan team to Chelsea that time. I went with my friend who was a mentor to me as a player, Libert Henry, a black guy. And we were watching the games. We're students of football, so we're desperate to see how Mourinho would set his team up. And lo and behold, we had some fans shouting out some derogatory statements, some racist stereotypes, saying to the Italian team, you Dagos, this and that. And to which point his mate next to him said, no, they're not Dagos, they're Wops, they're Italians. They couldn't even get their racism right. So this is what you're effectively having to deal with at these type of clubs. And it's not just Chelsea, it's something you hear all the time. I think anyone who sits in the stand, away from the media section of stuff, if you go as a supporter, you'll hear these racist comments all the time. They're always there.
Did you hear them on the pitch when you were playing as well?
Yeah, listen, I would have heard stuff like you Irish, this and that. I remember playing against Arsenal, Mark Overmar's first game. I was playing right back against him, and it was a difficult time. I was kicking him all over the place at Highbury. I remember even fans going to me because I was playing for Coventry, you Northern this, you Northern that. To which then when there was a lull in the game, I was saying, listen, I grew up in Islington, Camden Town. I'm one of you lot. It's just a nonsense in terms of what people come out with. But in terms of what he's done for such a young man who's had to go through so much, I think it's been amazing what he's come out with and the reason that he's made this now such a topical debate.
Yeah, he sure has. As for the action on the field, Manchester City beaten. I mean, we were just reflecting here. If at the exact moment Virgil van Dijk skied the ball in the Merseyside derby last week before it hit the crossbar twice, if you hit pause there and said somehow Liverpool are going to be top of the table within 7 days, you would have said impossible. It's amazing how things turn around. There is still just this sense, as well as Liverpool are doing, that it's still very much City's title to lose. But Liverpool really are hanging in there.
Liverpool been so impressive, unbeaten already. The very fact they've only conceded 6 goals suggests that they've got a title-winning team. It's just whether or not they can get ahead of Manchester City, who will probably go down as one of the greatest ever Premier League teams. And I know they've lost at Chelsea. I wouldn't buy into the facts that the wheels are going to fall off because they were so impressive in that opening first half. They destroyed Chelsea. They targeted Jorginho. They robbed the ball off of him, went through, should have made it count. And I think you look at that game, and even Guardiola says, we've played games that we've won, and I've been far more angrier than I have, and we've lost this game. Yeah. So I don't sense that this is going to be the start of Manchester City falling by the wayside. And I think Liverpool got all to do still, but nevertheless, it's been a fascinating league so early. Yeah,
the last time, Dan, they lost last January of this year. They then went unbeaten in the league all the way through until Manchester United beat them in the derby, I think, in April. So it's not like, I don't know, sometimes Arsenal, when they got a bad defeat, they seem to crumble at times. Manchester City don't have that history, certainly not last season.
No, and I know, like, Pep obviously has to come out and pitch it in a different way, but as Gary said, it wasn't a performance that would give you massive cause for alarm. I mean, did you think, Gary, that Chelsea were particularly good in terms of how they performed in the game? I mean, obviously they beat Man City, but I mean, was there something encouraging about how Chelsea performed in terms of their season?
Well, certainly the result more than anything, because Sarri was starting to take a little bit of stick. People were throwing accusations that he was another Scolari as such. I'd never seen it as that. I think they can take a lot of pride in the fact that they stayed in the game, which is key against Manchester City. If you can stay in the game, you give yourself a chance. But I can't look past that opening 44 minutes before Kante got that goal.
Yeah.
Chelsea got ripped open.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And David Luiz has come out as the star on the day in terms of getting the goal, that lovely big diag. But listen, there's no consistency attached to him. He's still vulnerable. Alonso got ripped to pieces by Sterling. So I think there's still a lot to be done. I think the Premier League and certainly a lot of the good teams who can hurt Chelsea have worked out. If you stop Jorginho, you can stop Chelsea. So I still think they're a work in progress. But listen, it's kept the league alive in terms of we didn't want it over by, the first couple of months of the new year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you spoke earlier about Gary, about Lampard and Gerrard and the opportunities they got, and one of the things we were going to talk about as well is Steven Gerrard, who I don't know if people are aware at the weekend that Rangers drew against 10 men Dundee yesterday, and they didn't play particularly well in the game, and Steven Gerrard came out afterwards and gave quite a strong interview, one of those interviews which would make you think this is like one of these great players that is struggling to cope with the limitations of maybe not so great players. It is a reality check today that we are not good enough to make 6 changes. When you were given a chance, go and perform, give me a problem and a headache. It should make my job easier because there will be less knocks at the door, because if players are honest with themselves and watch that performance back, I don't think they have a leg to stand on. I'll try to pick players that I trust with character and personality who can handle the occasion. People got to run out today, a test, and they failed miserably. Gary, how do you think that will go down in a dressing room?
Well, I think sometimes players can't handle the truth, and that was it. He was quick to say it. I thought your soundbite for him would have been, that wasn't a performance of Rangers players, which he said, this is Rangers Football Club. And I was thinking, listen, you're playing to the fans here a little bit, and I can understand it. But that's an old tale in terms of that. You'd have seen quite often players who don't make the starting team in the league, they get their opportunity in the League Cup as such, don't play particularly well. And there's your answer. You've got to prove the manager wrong. When you get the opportunity, you have to take it. So it wasn't groundbreaking stuff that he was saying. And I think at times players need a little bit of a reality check, a bit of home truths. And Gerrard doesn't seem afraid to give it to them.
I didn't see much of that game, I must confess, but I did see a moment where the right back had the ball and was trying a big switch to the left winger, but hooked it really badly and just hooked it right out of play between his left winger and his left back, and the ball basically rolled to Gerrard in the dugout, and honestly he just lost the plot. I don't even think Gerrard would have tried that pass even in his palm.
Oh, no, he would have done.
He did like a Hollywood ball, I know, but this wasn't.
He had the absolute switch of play, diags, when he could have played a simple ball into 10, especially when he was younger. But listen, this is what you're dealing with. You're probably looking at his player thinking, what are you trying that Hollywood pass for? Just keep it simple. And that's the frustration. That's something he's going to have to learn. It's a difficult thing when you're coaching. You just want players to see what you're seeing. You're talking about an iconic player of his generation. And alongside him, Gary McAllister, a brilliant midfielder as well. So, listen, it's a difficult one, but I don't think that they're going to be the type like Glenn Hoddle, who used to look down disparagingly at players who couldn't do what he could. I don't think they're that type, but I think certainly they had an opportunity. They would feel they've wasted it because there was an opportunity to be and stay at the top of the league when points will be, you've got to take advantage of the fact that Celtic haven't built as many points as you'd normally expect because they're going to be strong in the second part of the season. And I think that's where the frustration comes from more than anything else.
The famous story about Glenn Hoddle pushing David Beckham out of the way at France 98 to show him how to take free kicks as one of the greats.
Yeah, exactly.
This is fascinating. So, maybe this is just a one-off case, or maybe this was a trend or something you did yourself, Gary. So Lukaku has made all the headlines. Needed to lose weight to fit into the Premier League style. In short, Lukaku's been talking about at the World Cup, where he basically bulked up for the World Cup. He scored 27 goals last season, all competitions. He scored just 6 times this year for United this season. So he said he'd put on weight for the World Cup. Bit of muscle. I was at the World Cup. I felt great, and I think I played great over there. He scored 4 times in 6 appearances in Russia. He said that when I came back, it's a different type of style. In the Premier League, I can't play with the same amount of muscle as international football. That was something when I came back, I knew straight away, I can't play in this style like this. I had to lose muscle, basically. So I stayed out of the gym, drank lots of water, a lot of veg and fish, and it helps. And talked as well about being a bit tired after the World Cup. But the muscle thing was interesting, the extra weight, the extra bulk for international football. Did you bulk up for 02?
Do you know what? I was laughing as you said the reference to me there about muscle. I wish I had a bit of muscle. But no, listen, I can see in terms of what he's saying. ultimately, I'm thinking to myself, if he's carrying, what is he, 6'3", he's looking to be about 15 stone. And if I think about Lukaku in his prime, it's running channels, running down the side of centre forwards, using his pace and that bit of mobility for someone so strong. And certainly, if he's talking about for international football, is he more static? Is he more of a John Hartson type leader of the line? I didn't really see that. I can understand what maybe he's suggesting, the fact that he just had to be a focal point, allow the likes of De Bruyne, Hazard then to run in around in behind him. We're talking about world-class players there, but it doesn't really make any sense as such.
I've never heard that before.
There's no doubt I've looked at him this season, and he has looked bulky. He looked a little bit like Josie Altidore to me in terms of he couldn't carry that type of weight. Do you remember the player to play for Sunderland?
Yeah.
He's in the MLS now with Toronto. And I think there is a fine line between muscle-bound players where they just get a little bit too big. They might get a little bit into the beach weights and aesthetically looking great, but it don't serve them a purpose in terms of getting around the pitch. And I think his mobility has been affected. And there was a noticeable change definitely on Saturday. He was chasing lost causes down in the fullback areas. Looked like he had a bit of a more fluidity about his game, but I don't know, it's a strange thing to come out and say.
It is strange. I know. Is he going to bulk up quickly now in the international break and then try and cut the weight off? Like, it's just odd, all right. Troy Parrott.
Sounds like a boxer. Yeah.
I know, yeah, he'll be like cutting weight. I've never heard anyone
like
say
Ricky
that before.
Hatton or something. He's just getting himself ready for certain matches.
Yeah.
The Troy Parrott, you just mentioned Troy Parrott. I mean, this is exciting, but also you're also conscious of like not wanting to build up sort of an unfair amount of hype around a player. But so Troy Parrott, if people aren't familiar, he's 16 years of age. He turned 17 in February. He was brought away with the Spurs first team to Leicester on Saturday. Didn't make the bench. He was never going to make the bench, I think. But he only moved over to England full-time in the summer from Belvedere. And Pochettino spoke about him afterwards. I think he's in Barcelona now. There's this UEFA Youth League on, so he will be playing, I think, for the 19s tomorrow. Yeah. But he is in and around the first team now. And it's possible he might get a chance in the coming months at the age of 16 with a top-level club, which is extraordinary, really, given we talk about where the player's coming from. But, I mean, it's exciting, but I don't know how you feel about it, Gary, that, you know, we're so desperate for a hero to come along that we're in danger of, like, pinning so much hopes on a guy who's gone from under 17 to under 19 level already out of his age group. How much more do we ask and look for that's actually fair?
Well, listen, this is what we are as supporters. We're always looking for the next star. Of course we are. But I've never seen him play live, but I've heard so much about him, so highly thought of. And if I'm honest, I couldn't pick a better manager for him to be under. Now, you might say Guardiola, who I'm a great admirer of, but he don't play those young players quite as much. Yeah. You think about Pochettino, what he's done at Southampton in terms of developing those players into England players. Then likewise, he's done it at Tottenham. Now, he's elevated someone like Kane, who wasn't Robbie Keane, he wasn't Michael Owen or Wayne Rooney destined to be a player. He's been cultivated by Pochettino. He wasn't given his opportunity. Same with Dele Alli, bringing him from MK Dons under the noses of so many other clubs who didn't take a chance, and they've gone on to be top players. Now, if Pochettino's got him now at 16, training with his first team squad, that bodes well for us. Yeah. Even the soundbites coming out from the place is, I'm just concentrating on my football, but he could not be at a better club under a better manager than Pochettino, and it is exciting. We may well try and bat it down, and I'm reluctant, like you, Dan, not to build him up too much, but nevertheless, I'll be looking at his development with so much anticipation now, and that's not to put pressure on him, but it's just to see that you've got a young player of his talent given to someone like Pochettino to mould. I think that's so exciting.
Yeah, there'll be a decent standard of training in there, I would think. Gary, we are pretty much out of time, mate. Hopefully it's a Parrott Obafemi forward line for Ireland, banging them in for Stephen Kenny down the line. Thanks a million for this evening, appreciate it.
Or Mick McCarthy. Thanks, guys.
Let's not forget Mick McCarthy, absolutely, I'm with you there. Thanks a million, Gary Breen.
All right, good night, guys.
See you, thanks a million. Gary Breen there, excellent as always. Meanwhile, Everton 1, Watford 2, the very latest from Goodison Park. They're into injury time there. Any last thoughts? You about 30 seconds?
No, I mean, like the Detroit case is very interesting. I mean, he is, watched him play for the 17s last summer. He scores goals, but he's actually in some ways a number 10 in terms of how he plays too. Very skillful, great at the dead ball. You just,
Stop now. Stop.
I know, but I mean, there's Adam Ida. We actually do have some good young strikers coming through. Obafemi, it's not just one as well, so that's the good news in a position where we need them.
For sure. Now, just to mark your card, we are going to talk to Leon Blanche from our sponsor, Boyle Sports, in a second. And over the course of the discussion, we'll naturally enough refer to betting odds and gambling. So if you're affected by this content, then you can rejoin us at another time. And remember to gamble sensibly. For more, check out gambleaware.ie or visit dunlewey.net, dunlewey.net. So we're back in a sec looking ahead to the Champions League games.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Get Christmas wrapped up this year with Harvey Norman with gifts that they'll really love, like the incredible Canon 2000 DSLR for the camera lover in your life. Get creative and capture every moment this Christmas, all for only $499. Or get the Lenovo Tab 4 with Home Assist speaker, now only $199. From entertaining the kids to catching up on Netflix, the Tab 4 is the ideal gift for anyone this Christmas. So for more gift ideas, visit us online or in store. Christmas wrapped up. Love Harvey Norman.
Ever punched the air and kissed the person next to you?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
During It's a Wonderful Life? Ever jumped up and down and roared at the top of your lungs?
Jingle time, jingle time, jingle.
Singing Christmas carols? Ever been so tense you could hear a pin drop? Playing Monopoly? Didn't think so. Be part of the 50,000 who join the roar for Leinster versus Bath. Saturday, December 15th at the Aviva Stadium. Kick-off 5:30pm. Terms and conditions apply.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome back. So Leon Blanche from our show sponsor Boyle Sports is on the line. Evening, Leon.
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
Good. So Champions League is back with us.
Yes, it certainly is. And obviously 2 huge games. Spurs away against Barcelona. But they've given themselves a little bit of a chance of staying in the group now. And they rested a couple of big-name players in their Premier League victory against Leicester. Harry Kane didn't start. Christian Eriksen didn't start, but they still got the job done. And they're tied on 7 points, but they're second in the table because of their goal difference is +8 and Inter Milan is +5. So if they go to the Nou Camp and win, they'll actually get into the knockout stages of the Champions League. And Barcelona, no matter what happens in this fixture, they're guaranteed to win the group. So you'd be hoping that they might rest a couple of their star name players.
Yeah.
And the match odds, Spurs have come in quite considerably from when this fixture was first priced up. They're now only 2-1, having been as big as 11-4. And Barcelona have drifted from odds on out to odds against. They're now 11-10, and the draw is 14-5. It's still going to be a huge task for any team to go and play Barcelona away and get all 3 points. But they've given themselves a chance, and they might as well just go for it, because I think Inter Milan are probably going to beat PSV. So it looks like Spurs have got to go and beat Barcelona to get into the knockout stages.
Yeah, Spurs will have to assume that Inter play PSV. PSV are on a point and have nothing to play for really, and Inter Milan have everything to play for. So Spurs will have to assume that they need 3 points away to Barcelona. It's still a huge ask, but a big turnaround from when it looked like they were out of the thing completely just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's one huge game.
Yeah, it is a huge game. And I think they've given themselves... Look, they obviously shot themselves in the foot a little bit with a couple of the results they got away from home when they were definitely in control. I mean, I think back to that game against Inter Milan. I mean, they conceded those 2 late goals. But look, beat Barcelona and they're into the knockout stages, the last 16 of the Champions League.
Yeah, so that's on tomorrow. And people will have a choice, I suppose. The neutrals will have a choice anyway about which game to watch, because at the same time, Liverpool host Napoli. This is kind of a curious game in that a 1-0 win for Liverpool does it, but if Napoli score, then Liverpool will have to win by 2 clear goals. That's just the breakdown of this game. It's a curious situation, but that is it. So I suppose in broad terms, is it more about whether Liverpool will get through, or are people looking at the match, or what's piquing interest here?
Yeah, I think Liverpool have just been, they've been chalk and cheese in the Champions League when they've played at home. They've obviously beat PSG, and they obviously beat Red Star as well and got 6 from 6, but away from home they've got 0 points from 9, so they've left it to the last group game. Anfield, I'm sure, will be rocking tomorrow evening. They're odds-on favourites, Liverpool, at 8-13, the draw 3-1, and Napoli are a big price. They're almost 4-1. They're 15-4 to beat Liverpool at Anfield. Both sides had 4-0 victories in their respective league games at the weekend. And as you rightly said, Joe, 1-0 is an 8-1 chance. And I think when you look at Liverpool this year, there's no doubt that their back five, including their keeper, has been absolutely tremendous in the Premier League. A little bit shaky away from home in the Champions League. But Mo Salah, what can you say about him? People were saying he was off form. He bangs in a hat-trick at the weekend. I think he's been one of Liverpool's better players. I think Mane will start, having come off the bench against Bournemouth. He's 11-2. But as you rightly said, if Napoli score, it means Liverpool have got to win by 2 clear goals. Look, I think Liverpool at home, they're very, very good on any given night, Joe, and the crowd certainly will be the 12th man. The atmosphere at Anfield will be electric, and currently sitting at the top of the Premier League table, the one thing I'm sure Jurgen Klopp does not want to happen is that they finish third in this group and end up in the Europa League, because I think that could have play a huge role in their Premier League aspirations.
Okay, it's going to be a brilliant night regardless of what happens. Leon, thanks a million for all that.
All the best, Joe.
Cheers. Leon Blanche there from our football sponsor, Boyle Sports. For more information, you can check out offtheball.com/Boyle Sports. And remember to gamble sensibly. And if you're in need of any help or advice, then dunlewy.net is where you can go. That's DUNLEWEY.net. Loads of information there. That's pretty much our lot for this evening. Tomorrow, OTBAM is going to be live on all our social channels, 7:45 a.m. The usual business, including tomorrow, Andy McEntee and Michael Darragh Macaulay in studio with Jaron Owen, no doubt talking about the early thoughts on the new rules. And then tomorrow night, we're back from 7. We'll have Kenny Cunningham in studio for the whole show, talking, as you might imagine, about Spurs and Liverpool in Champions League action. Richie is up next for Tom Dunn. We'll talk to you then. Good luck.